The French actually have come up with the term Bovarisme. And Bovarisme means, in French, to project onto others, either people or places, your own desires and needs and fantasies. So Emma seeks in her reading, she finds it in her dreams, kinds of gratification that her life does not offer her. She wishes that there would be sighs by moonlight, long embraces, tearful embraces as well because of one's happiness. Frequently in her mind, because of what she's read, they would be connected with great castles and silken boudoirs. But she also buys a map of Paris because she reads about Parisian fashions. And on this map, she projects her own desires and her own fantasies, imagines herself walking through these elegant streets, going into these elegant Parisian boutiques. All of this is what Bovarisme is. Well, Flaubert can be very brutal in this book, not just in the theory, as I said, that perhaps we are constructed, but he can be brutal about his own characters. He tries not to be. He tries to let the story tell itself. But a phrase like this, when he talks about Emma, that she, he says, was incapable of understanding what she did not experience. It's an interesting line. Incapable of understanding what she did not experience or believing anything that did not take on a conventional form. That's the killer. So frequently, he's going to make these jabs at her, telling us that she's deficient, she's got defective machinery here, her responses are wrong. And nonetheless, I say all of this because Flaubert told his friends that he hated writing this book, that he hated Emma Bovary, that he hated the subject matter that he chose, that he thought love was a vulgar, trite subject, that he didn't particularly believe in it. At the same time, he's well known for having said, Madame Bovary, c'est moi. Madame Bovary, that's me. Now you go ahead and try to sort that one out, because he's both of these people. As I said at the beginning, there is a warfare inside of him between the dreamer and the realist, between the person who wants ecstasy and bliss, and then the cynical, surgical fellow. And I say surgical because his father and his brother were physicians. He comes out of a medical background. All of these things fit together or sort of wrestle with each other in a very interesting way in this book. The book measures Emma's love life. It measures one of the titles of the title of one of his very great books it's as great, I think, as Madame Bovary, is L'éducation sentimentale, sentimental education, and that's essentially what happens in this book. We watch the entire sort of curve of Emma's life as she tries to satisfy her needs and wants, and they may not be satisfiable. We've seen that it starts out badly with Charles Bovary as her husband, and he goes from mediocre to worse. And in particular, one of the most embarrassing episodes in his life is that he performs a botched surgery. There's a fellow in the town, the village there in Hippolyte, who has a club foot, and he gets along with this club foot. He sort of limps and bounces all over the place, not having any trouble. But Emma, not Charles, Emma says, well, now this is the opportunity for you to display your mettle as a doctor. After all, you've read the medical books. Go ahead and operate on him and make it possible for him to walk properly. Charles is a little bit worried this may not work. He goes back to the books. He reads everything he can about all the intricate kinds of tendons and muscles and nerves. He performs an operation. Everybody claps. The whole town is there. He puts poor Hippolyte's foot into a box afterwards. Everybody's convinced this is it. We've got a magical doctor here. And of course, it's a disaster. Gangrene sets in, and eventually the foot has to be amputated. And of course, this also amputates any chances that Charles might have in rising to some sort of position of esteem. And it's sort of the last straw, I think, for Emma to ever think that her husband could be worth much. Another episode in the same vein is when they go to this ball. They're invited to because they're not of high station, but they're invited to this ball at the Vaubyessard, which is an aristocratic family, because Charles had at one point attended the Marquis. And there too, she has a sense of what the beautiful life is like, what the beautiful people are like. These are wealthy people accustomed to privilege and pleasure, leading an elegant kind of life. And she never forgets this. Stays in her mind as what she can never have, a station to which she cannot rise. But these needs, as I said, are stubborn. They're going to be lifelong needs that she has to find romance. So the next candidate is this young law clerk, Léon, in the village that they move to next. He initially seems dreamy and as cliché-ridden as she is. And Flaubert writes about their encounter in a kind of remarkable way, and I'll read you a segment of it so you'll see what I mean. That we hear the two of them exchanging remarks about each other, taking each other's measure, and we hear what the love discourse of this book sounds like. I think there is nothing so beautiful as sunsets, but especially by the seashore. If you had to define a cliché, that would be it. Nothing so beautiful as sunsets, especially by the seashore. Léon doesn't miss a beat. Oh, I love the sea. And doesn't it seem to you, Emma continues, that the mind travels more freely on this limitless expanse, of which the contemplation elevates the soul, gives ideas of the infinite, the ideal, and once again, Léon rises to the challenge. It is the same with mountainous landscapes, he says, and he talks about Switzerland. Such spectacles must stir to enthusiasm, incline to prayer, to ecstasy. Flaubert, I think, is grimacing as he writes this language. For him, this is the trivialized, cliched language that people use when they speak about their needs and fantasies and desires. But what is characteristic of this book is that that conversation takes place in the inn that they are received in when they arrive in this new town, and it is cut, spliced almost cinematically by the remarks of the pharmacist in the town. And the pharmacist is the realist figure of this text. The pharmacist, instead, is going to talk about the ailments of the town to the doctor, so he gives us a kind of grocery list of enteritis and bronchitis and scrofula. He will talk about the median temperatures in each season. He describes the winds and the vapors and the exhalations and the fumes. He sounds like an almanac description of this village. And you've got to imagine the kind of contrapuntal technique of interweaving the sort of romantic cliches on the one hand and this sort of almanac information about the town in the other. That's the way Flaubert is going to work in this book. The love between Emma and Léon, because they are both in love with each other, is never consummated. Léon then leaves Yonville, and then comes the next candidate, Rudolf, who is a handsome country gentleman and who is determined to seduce Emma, who is a pretty young woman. He says that she is gaping after love like a carp on the kitchen table after water. Emma, of course, is much taken with him. He's very seductive, he's very attractive. He has a kind of male authority and charm and charisma that Charles doesn't have at all. And so they go riding together. Charles abets this. He has no idea what's going on, and generally has no idea what's going on. And Rodolphe makes love to her. And there, too, I want you to hear the way this comes across. After they've had sex, and she comes home, husband, of course, suspects nothing. All she can say is, I have a lover. I have a lover. She looks into the mirror. I have a lover. And she remembers all the heroines who have lovers in some of the books that she's read. But the way Flaubert, and that I want to suggest is that same cliched language, the way Flaubert has written the actual experience that she has when making love to him tells us about a different writer altogether. We see that the sun dazzles her eyes, and she looks around and we hear about luminous patches that tremble on the ground as if hummingbirds flying about had scattered their feathers. And Flaubert writes, she felt her heartbeat return and the blood coursing through her flesh like a river of milk. That's not a cliche. That's the language of a poet. So that when Flaubert describes the actual sensations of this figure, language that she's not capable of herself, we get some sense that love, yes, is still something holy and beautiful. Later, more seasoned, Emma re-encounters Léon. She goes to Rouen, and she meets him at the opera. And now they're ready to have a more serious love affair because she's now a more practiced person. And this goes through all of the stages of passion, becoming more and more insistent and provocative and desperate. She sees him, as I said, at the opera. She sees at the opera the kind of magnification of human passion.